Hello, everyone, and welcome to the number one liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast, and I am happy to be back with you guys. I know Saturday not having a show was kind of a bummer. I do have a little bit of an announcement, or actually more of a question for you guys all in the chat that I'll get to later on in the program. Something for you to think about and something for you to let me know how you feel in regards to this particular thing that I'm planning on trying to do for this weekend. But first, let's get into the drinking. Tonight, I am drinking the James and Pepper 1776 bourbon. I opened up this bottle a couple episodes ago, and so this is actually a pretty good bourbban, and yeah, it's it's a little darker than what I'm used to, than what I usually drink. But of course, I'm doing it in the We the People shot glass with the bullet on the end. This comes from Lucky Shot. You can check their options out at luckyshot.us or luckyshot.usa.com. And as you can see, I've got my stones in the bottom there. Let me tilt the glass so you guys can kind of see the stones. Drinking it cold, of course. Some good stuff. All right. And today is also Whiskey Wednesday. It's like Taco Tuesday, but for badasses. Yeah. And that should be all of us in terms of badasses, us whiskey drinkers. And you know what? If you don't drink whiskey, that's fine. You can cozy up with whatever adult beverage that you want and listen to my roughly hour and a half program. All just relaxing and chilling, hanging out in the chat. Head on over to Rumble, of course. That's where the party is. There are some people in Facebook land. Haven't seen anybody pop in on YouTube, which honestly, that really isn't. And of course, if you're watching me on Twitter, yeah, I can't interact with you on Twitter, so that's cool. We have a new person over in Rumble. I caught them. The username is Doug19113806. Welcome to the program. This is a pleasure to have you with us for this evening. And I'm imagining that those numbers actually might mean something. Indicating, you could see for those of you who are going to be listening on the audio program, you can't see me indicating the bullet that's part of the We the People shot, Lucky Shot USA glass. All right. So let me go ahead and get into tonight's affiliation. And it's been a little bit, so I can't remember exactly which one it is. All right. So here we go. I want to talk to you a little bit about True Grit Roots Network. True Grit Roots Network, TGRN, champions independent artists while paying respect to the pioneers who shaped modern roots music, featuring outlaw country, blues, and rock with a unique twist of urban that is carefully selected and purposely put together. We are the radio highway that connects the back roads, highways, and city streets to your favorite dance hall, roadhouse, and juke joint. TGRN provides original exclusive programming and interviews that are produced and hosted by our own team of DJs, hosts, and personalities. See what happens when I'm off for a day? Just horrible. Anyway, find us on the web at tgrn.net to download our app in the App Store and from Google Play. Alternatively, you can find us in the Live 365 catalog of digital radio stations and through the Live 365 app as well. You can also play our station on your Amazon Alexa by saying play True Grit Roots Network from Live 365. Be sure to use the word from in the command play True Grit Roots Network from Live 365. Live 365 is now on Roku as well, so you can listen through your television. Breaking Boundaries for Authentic Roots Radio, TGRN.net, True Grit Roots Network, Austin, Texas. And of course, just because I am that honest, I am a part owner in that particular that particular endeavor. Okay. Oh my gosh. We have got a slam dunk ton of stuff to talk about. And to be honest, I don't even think I'm going to be able to get all the way through everything that I have in the program. So if I don't reach something, or you're just curious, if you go to Rumble and YouTube, both in the descriptions, and actually I think Facebook does it too, in the description of the video, there is a listing. I try and put a listing of all that. Basically, it's like the show notes. It's in the description. And there are links in there to go to the various articles that I do discuss. For those of you who are brand new to the station, hey, I see somebody over on YouTube, The Conservative Lounge. Thank you for joining. Glad to see you in the chat over there. Although I am going to be honest with you, the party is actually over on Rumble. If you really want to know, you got to pop on over to Rumble. So anyway, we've got a ton of stuff here. I want to get into it. I really, really, really want to get into it. Obviously, the biggest break is dealing with Hunter Biden, and I will get to that momentarily. But first, I don't know if anybody has really heard here recently about the tape that CNN leaked. And realistically, to be honest with you, the leaked tape is more exciting to those who are on the left side of the aisle than it is necessarily for those on the conservative right, who tend to kind of hold back a little bit, in reserve to wait. I mean, Dan Bongino calls it the Bongino rule. Just wait 72 hours before things kind of, really in the news cycle really catch up, because of course the news is really built on sensationalism. And so, they are in a rush to get it out, to be the first to get something out, not necessarily that they get it right. And so because of that, there's a lot of things that will come out in the news, and you just got to sit back and kind of take a deep breath and take it in, let it sort of simmer, as you say, on the stove until you get the final product. And like I said, Dan Bongino calls it the Bongino 72-hour rule. I kind of prescribe to that. And so you just sort of have to take like the news cycles, first part of the news cycles, and just sort of, just sort of let it percolate a little bit first before you go and jump onto the bandwagon. Well, obviously this popped in the news. Let's see if I get it. Oop. Of course not. I don't have it in. Let's see. Where did that go? Here we go. So, of course, the CNN audio tape that was leaked with regards to Donald Trump talking to what appeared to be a White House staffer at the time, or a staffer, sorry, not the White House, but a Mar-a-Lago staffer, and a person who is, kind of like getting ready to write the Donald Trump memoirs or some sort of a book or whatever. And the thing about it is that, first of all, this is an audio tape. Second of all, you have to make the assumption that Donald Trump knew that he was being taped. So anything that he essentially says on it, and keep in mind, I like Donald Trump as a presidential candidate. Just to be clear, I like Donald Trump as a presidential candidate. I am not all that pleased about Donald Trump, the man. But that being said, there is one thing for sure, is that Donald Trump loves to talk about Donald Trump. He is a complete narcissist. And so because of that, you've got to get past some of his bluster, some of his showmanship, some of his, being a part of of his persona, which is essentially kind of bigger than life. And that's kind of what you sort of hear whenever he interacts with certain people, especially those who essentially, fawn over him or provide it or basically stroke his ego. He's going to make himself sound, of course, better than what he might actually be. Now, again, as I've said on multiple times on this program, I believe that Donald Trump is a good president. Okay. I believe that he deserves another chance. If he becomes the Republican nominee for president for 2024, I will vote for him. There is no doubt in my mind at all. At the same time, if Ron DeSantis happens to go in, then that's who I'm going to vote for, because the reality of it is that we have to beat Joe Biden. We have to beat the Democrats. But outside of that, I am also a bit of a realist. And as a realist, I can pretty much tell you that some of this conversation sounds like it's a Donald Trump trying to bolster his own image to other people. And also the other thing you have to realize is you don't know, because there hasn't been any testimony from the other two people that were in the room. Okay. There's no other testimony as to what papers Donald Trump is actually showing people on this leaked tape. And Bongino brought up a couple of really good points. He brought that up, but he also brought up the fact that, it's entirely possible that what Donald Trump was showing people was not classified documents necessarily, because he could have been showing them a news article talking about, classified documents. He could have been showing them a newspaper clipping talking about, in particular, because the subject matter happens to be Iran and planning on going and attacking, America attacking Iran. He could have been showing them a couple of news articles that came out that sort of discussed Milley, General Milley, talking about how Trump was, unhinged and, wanting to attack Iran and things like that. So we honestly do not know what Donald Trump was showing those folks. And what's even more intriguing is the fact that we don't have any testimony from those two people. But what's the next most intriguing thing is the indictment being brought by Smith doesn't list, out of the 31 documents that were taken or that are part of the indictment of Donald Trump, the documents don't include the document that he was referring to on the tape. And so the left, especially on social media, has all been like, oh my gosh, he's got the tape, and the tape, he says blah, 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 blah. Even Ben Shapiro is really, really, really pushing to kind of like move away from Trump, because he doesn't believe that Trump is the guy that's going to be able to win against Biden. And so he spent a lot of time talking about that. And for that, I mean, I'll be honest with you, it's one of the things I appreciate Ben's opinion on some things, but I think on this, he's not quite right. I think he's missing the boat here. The fact of the matter is that this tape, there is no way to prove without having those witnesses actually talk about what was being shown. And even if they say, what was being shown, he could have easily just held up a stack of papers that maybe had a title on it and just, not shown them any kind of state secrets. Now, the thing that leads me to indicate that kind of way is because of the reaction of the people that are part of the tape. They are sort of chuckling and laughing. So for all I know, and for all you know, is Donald Trump could have drawn out a crayon thing on a piece of paper and held it up and said, see, this is classified documents, and it says Iran plan, and it's a drawing that maybe, you know, his grandson or something made. We literally have no idea. And until this comes out in court and gets fully vetted in the courts and shown, we're really not going to know. So for us to sit here, for anybody to sit here and say, oh, this tape is damning evidence, you know, it puts the nail in the coffin of Donald Trump. No, it doesn't. There's certain questions that we do have to ask about when we're dealing with this. So, you know, again, is it damning that he is saying on it that he could have declassified documents when he was president, but didn't? Absolutely. Does it seem like he might have been inferring that the document that he was holding was classified? Sure. But the reality of it is that we don't know what he was actually holding in his hand. We don't know specifically what was on those pieces of paper. And what's even worse is we don't even know if they were classified at the time that he was showing them. Because of the fact that we don't know the papers, the specific papers that he was looking at, we have no clue whatsoever whether or not the thing was even classified, whether it was no longer classified. You know, because there's a lot of documents that get classified, but then after, for an example, for special events, like Dan Bongino pointed out, you know, motorcade routes in a particular city on a particular day will be classified. But then once it happens, then, you know, once it happens, then it doesn't matter. It's no longer classified. And so the thing here that I think you want to point, and Buddy has been just hammering me over in Rumble. He keeps pointing out it's jury tampering. That is one clear possibility, by the way, is that the purpose for this is not so much to give damning evidence necessarily about the Trump tape and what Trump said, but to actually make people believe, like most people do, where they listen to it and they go, oh my gosh, that's damning, without asking the critical thinking questions of, well, wait a minute, how do we know that the document that he showed was actually classified? What is the document? What is it? So, you know, again, don't get too excited about this. Yes, it's out there. And I've actually on Twitter a couple times, I've pointed out the same thing. I've pointed out to people who are like, oh, this is damning evidence. This is the nail in the Trump coffin. And it's like, yeah, it's an audio tape, folks. You don't know what he is showing them. He could be showing them a cartoon for all we know. Okay. All right. Now there is a link in the description that I want you, if you get an opportunity, if you're really interested in this, if you get the opportunity, you really need to check this out. This is the Congressional Research Service, which, by the way, is basically a research arm for Congress, and they get commissioned to research things about the laws that have been written, current, former. They give legal opinions. They're usually put together by legislative attorneys. In this case, there's two of them. But what I'm looking at here is the Congressional Research Service report on criminal prohibitions on leaks and other disclosures of classified information. Now, what's really important on this is because of the fact that that Trump is being brought up on charges. He's been indicted on charges that are related to things like the Espionage Act, as an example. So, hat tip to Florida Renegade over on the Mark K show. She runs around on Rumble on Mark K, and she put in a link to this document. And so, of course, I grabbed it because I wanted to take a look at it. So hat tip to her for putting this on us. But the thing about it is, and I want to read a little bit of this to you. And the thing about it is that this is focused specifically on people who are not the president, but it does have some interesting information. You got to read the whole thing. I haven't read the entire thing word for word, but I've gotten a couple of things going on here. But let me go ahead and start. So this is from the synopsis page, or the summary page, in this report. And the report itself is about 35 pages long. I'm not going to go through all that, but this is the summary page that basically kind of summarizes what is in it. High-profile leaks and disclosures of protected government information have prompted frequent congressional interest in the criminal penalties for disclosing government secrets. In one recent case, a U.S. Air National Guardsman allegedly posted photographs on social media of documents that, according to media outlets, contained classified information about the Russia-Ukraine war and other international affairs. No single statute criminalizes all unauthorized disclosure of protected government information. Rather, the legal framework is based on a complex and often overlapping set of statutes or individual provisions within statutes, which are outlined in this report. Criminal prosecutions arising from unauthorized disclosures frequently focus on the Espionage Act, with specific charges varying based on certain factors. Successful prosecutions can result in punishments ranging from severe penalties and imprisonment for classic spying cases, when an individual collects information in an effort to provide aid to a foreign government, to less severe penalties for cases such as failing to report that protected information has been mishandled or lost. Historically, the United States has prosecuted under the Espionage Act and related statutes 1. Individuals with access to classified information and a corresponding obligation to protect it, who made it available to foreign agents, and 2. Foreign agents who obtain classified information unlawfully while present in the United States. So that's basically the two, just to diverse from this, that's basically the two sets of conditions that they usually use in order to get prosecuted under the Espionage Act. Now notice, neither one of those would be dealing with a president who shows somebody a unclassified document. Okay? So, anyway, let me move on and continue with the summary. The United States has also prosecuted individuals claiming an altruistic desire to expose protected information to the public based on their belief that the public good favors transparency into particular government activities. While not every prosecution against an alleged whistleblower has been successful, no individual has been acquitted on the grounds that the public interest in the leaked information was so significant as to justify an otherwise unlawful disclosure. In other words, just because you grab it because it's something that the government might be doing in terms of a nefarious situation, that that you can't then claim that grounds that it's in the public's interest to get that information rather than keeping it secret. And that's essentially what they're talking about there. All right. Some have questioned whether the Espionage Act covers only initial disclosure of protected information or whether it also criminalizes the receipt and publication of that information by third parties, such as the press. The United States has never prosecuted, now listen to this, the United States has never prosecuted a traditional news organization for receiving and publicizing leaked information. But it has extended its prosecution efforts to the individual not responsible for the initial disclosure. This report examines prosecutions of information or individuals who leak information to the press or policy organizations such as lobbying groups and think tanks, as well as civil and criminal actions that have been brought against the recipients of leaked information. Now, notice they don't talk about the person who leaked the information. They are just talking about the people who received the information. So, in essence, what's happening here is based on the legal scenario is that the Espionage Act hasn't necessarily been used to prosecute the person leaking the information. It's been used to prosecute the people that receive it. So in other words, they wouldn't necessarily go after President Trump. They would go after the secondary person in it. So anyway, the point here, and there's, again, there's a bunch of stuff going on here, but the point here is that the Espionage Act in and of itself has never been used in the way that Jack Smith is attempting to try and go after Donald Trump. So again, we're looking at a potential legal theory rather than a consistent prosecuted case that shows precedent in the legal system. Now, there was one statement in here that caught my eye, and I want to get to it. Just give me a second. So here's the thing about mens rea. Now, for those of you that don't know mens rea is Latin for the guilty mind, which basically means that it's referring to the defendant's mental state of culpability, and that the government must prove in order to secure a conviction that the defendant knew what they were doing, consciously knew it, and still went ahead and did it anyway. Now, one could argue that just by the fact that Donald Trump is pretty much saying, hey, I declassified that stuff, so why is it that big of a deal, that this would alleviate the mens rea requirement. Okay, but from the report, again, one of the principal and most complex distinguishing factors among statutory prohibitions on the disclosure of protected information, particularly among various sections of the Espionage Act, is the use of differing mens rea requirements. Latin for the guilty mind, the term mens rea refers to the defendant's mental state of culpability that the government must prove in order to secure a conviction. Now, that's the clean and clear point here, is that they have to prove as a part of this part of this trial that Trump did intend on passing that information off to other government entities, and that he knew what he was doing, clearly knew. Now, this is obviously pretty hard. Okay. Now it says for instance, some laws require that the prosecution demonstrates that the defendant intentionally committed the act in question. That is, committed the act with the conscious desire for the harmful conduct to occur, while others require the act be done with a lesser mens rea, e.g. willfully, knowingly, or negligently. Now, this is the key thing. This is the key thing as to why the FBI decided not to prosecute Hillary Clinton. Because of the fact that even though she had her server set up, they sort of made the reference to the fact that she believed that it was secure. Now, I can argue, or anybody with any sense can argue, that she knew it wasn't secure because she took hammers to the damn BlackBerries and she bleach bit the damn server in order to get rid of it. And the only reason why, which would indicate, honestly, a mens rea, willful, knowing, and negligent and culpability, because she had that done. So, the FBI doesn't have a lot of leg to stand on with the decision to not charge Hillary Clinton in this. Now, a couple of sections of the Espionage Act, when it talks about mens rea, require the defendant to have acted with intent or reason to believe that the national defense information at issue is to be used to the injury of the United States or to the advantage of a foreign nation. So, in other words, some of this, the defendant, Trump, would have to have known that the persons that were in the room that he was showing the documents to, which again, we don't know what those documents were. They're not listed in the indictment. So we don't even know what they could have been. But the whole idea here is that, again, mens rea, it goes to the state of the person's mind. And so they're going to have a tough row to hoe, to be honest with you, with this whole thing on Trump. But of course, more will develop over time with regards to that. All right. So let me get to, let me go ahead and take a second, take a break. Breather. Give me a little shot of bourbon. All right. That's some good stuff, I'm going to tell you. All right. So I have a question now that we have a pretty much a quorum. I have a question for all of y'all. So Saturday, that's this Saturday's broadcast. Unfortunately, it's going to potentially be interrupted again by my paying job. So here's the thing. And I'm going to propose two options to you guys. Do me a favor in the chats. Tell me which option you want. Okay. So option number one is that I start transmitting and broadcasting 2 hours earlier. So instead of at 9 p.m. Eastern, I transmit at 7 p.m. Eastern and do a regular full show. Okay. So that's option one. Option two is I start broadcasting about an hour and a half earlier. So instead of 2 hours, an hour and a half, and I only do an hour long show. So I want to broadcast on Saturday, but I have to move it. That is something that I absolutely cannot do. So I can't miss another Saturday. I miss you guys. So here's the thing. Again, let me know by either giving me a 1 or a 2. If you want me to broadcast 2 hours earlier, meaning 7 p.m. Eastern time start, and do a full show on Saturday, give me a number 1. If you want me to broadcast an hour and a half earlier and only do an hour long broadcast, give me a number 2. And we'll go ahead and I'll just kind of let that kind of go. I'm going to sort of calculate in my mind, count them up. Maybe somebody can count all the 1s and the 2s. I see Rumble going like crazy. I don't see anything. I've got a couple. I have no preference, so that's fine. So yeah, so let me know what it looks like. It looks like I'm getting the 1s, option 1s. So it looks like I'm getting the 2 hours earlier. All right, then that's what we will do. So Saturday's show, instead of at 6, it will be on, or sorry, instead of at 9 p.m. Eastern, it will be on at 7 p.m. Eastern. And I will, I'll let everybody know through my social media as best I can. If you're not following me on my social media, by the way, I would highly suggest it, because there are times when I've had to cancel things or change things, that kind of stuff. So, all right. So it looks like, it is going to be a 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, and 4 p.m. Pacific start time. I got a couple work with my schedules. Well, thank you, Jeannie. I do appreciate that. I usually try and keep these things out of the way, but unfortunately there are times when I just can't do it. So it looks like Saturday night is going to be a early night. I will be 2 hours earlier. So instead of 9 p.m. Eastern, it will be 7 p.m. Eastern. Convert that the way that you want. Okay. Sorry, Becky. I'm sorry that you're going to miss it, but you can always pick up the recording, of course. All right. Okay. So earlier on Saturday, 2 hours early on Saturday. Perfect. So that means, again, just to be clear, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Mountain, 4 p.m. Pacific. There you go. All right. Okay, so let's move on to the talk of the town. The talk of the town, of course, and I've been talking about it a lot. I've taken a lot of hits and shots and everything else on Twitter and other social media outlets. I talk a lot about Twitter, but that's just because it's so fun to be over on Twitter and have the twats of Twitter, who are the Democrat liberal BSers over on Twitter, kind of take pot shots at me until I hit them up with the reality of the world. But anyway, so here's, oh gosh, 3 Chevy, you're my problem child, aren't you? You were the problem child in school, weren't you? He's like, what about on Guam? I'm not going to, I can't convert that. I don't know about Guam's time shift. All right. So that was good though. I do appreciate that. All right. So, all right. So here's the thing. I've been talking about this a lot. Hunter Biden's laptop. There've been a lot of people who've been saying that, the Hunter Biden laptop itself, has, been faked. It's been, tampered with, so on and so forth, that the FBI never collected it. So on and so forth. And what ended up happening, honestly, is that apparently this new information came out. This article's in Just the News. Some new information came out that, apparently the FBI validated Hunter Biden's laptop months before the 51 Intel experts made their disinformation claims. I mean, let's be honest here, folks. This is just, I'm kind of beating a dead horse. I'm going to be honest with you. Anyway, it just, this thing is real. Hunter Biden left it. He was a drugged out, well, he's not exactly the smartest person in the room either. I mean, just ask Joe Biden. Joe Biden thinks he's the smartest person he has ever known. And we all know how smart Joe Biden is. So anyway, the point being here is that, the FBI had the laptop. It was authenticated by them, and they chose to do nothing. Okay? They chose to do nothing about it. And the thing about it is, in this article, in the Just the News article, again, the links are in the show notes. You can take a look. There is a memo that was put out by the IRS that has a, let me see if I can just pop this up here. There's a memo that has essentially a hard drive timeline that was put together by the IRS. And it's got a lot of information in it in a short, I mean, it's a bulleted list for those that can't see it, who are going to be listening on audio later, if you're not already listening on audio, audio only. But there's a lot of information about when the FBI got it, when they created the leads that were initiating the, they call it the sportsman operation, because I guess that was Hunter Biden's code name when Joe was VP. But yeah, they've got all this information on it. So for those of you who are liberals and leftists and basic lunatics who are watching this show or watching this program, I'm sorry, folks. But the reality of it is that yes, the Hunter Biden laptop is real. The information on it is real. So are the pictures, which have been leaked online. And believe me, I don't want to see some of those pictures. They're, ugh. But anyway, the point being here is that I'm sorry, but this is the now usurping, the Watergate scandal as the biggest presidential scandal in history. And, there's also another whistleblower transcript, from Agent Shapley, who was the IRS agent in charge of investigating Hunter for the tax evasion. And yeah, so there's a lot of things that are coming out about this. And in fact, even the New York Times, which of course is a left-leaning news outlet, the New York Times has had to write about the Hunter Biden laptop and the lead with regards to the whistleblower allegations. So this is really, really heating up, and it's getting worse and worse because not only do we have the original IRS whistleblower in Agent Shapley, there's also a secondary whistleblower, as well as some more information with regards to some chats that went through WhatsApp. Now, everybody's been watching this, but apparently this popped out in Breitbart. The Chris Clark, who is Hunter Biden's attorney, admitted during a conversation, an interview, something like that. But anyway, he literally admitted and released a statement that in regards to the WhatsApp text, and just like everything else that's going on about the Hunter Biden laptop and the whole Hunter Biden story, they pretty much, the text itself is real, as well as the emails and all this other stuff that's being culled from the Hunter Biden laptop. But apparently the texts are real, and there's another text. So we all know of the one text that was out there about the fact that, Joe Biden was sitting next to him. But there also is another text that he sent to a different CEFC chairman who basically he threatens that the Bidens, the entire family, or they're assuming that it was Biden, Biden and Joe Biden that they're talking about Joe. But there is another text that apparently states that his father, meaning Joe, is not going to be happy with the fact that they didn't get the payment, $10 million payment or whatever it was. So anyway, yeah, this is just unraveling. It is unraveling fast. It is unraveling furiously. And this is part of the reason why the mainstream media, although it is kind of interesting, though, that the New York Times actually had something in it. And even CBS is actually going into it and talking about it now. They're actually doing what would be considered real journalism. But they are essentially kicking around now they're starting to kick around the story and talk a little bit about what is happening. But of course they bury it way down deep. Now this is from the Daily Wire, where it talks about the, let's see, who is it? Who is this? Jason Foster tweeted about burying the lead. And basically down in about the 21st paragraph, according to one tweeter, basically said that it has an independent source who confirms the two whistleblowers claim that David Weiss said that he was blocked from bringing charges against Hunter Biden in California. So here's the thing. Not only is there, we have tweets and everything going back and forth between Hunter and some Chinese stuff, or Chinese dignitaries, foreign entities, and so on and so forth, basically proving that Hunter Biden was an undeclared foreign agent. But we also have a comment. Where is it? Nope, wrong one. We also have this whole thing about the prosecutor, David Weiss, who essentially told at least 6 witnesses last year that he lacked the authority to charge the first son outside of Delaware. Now, this is contradictory to what Meritless Garland, Hold on. So I got to catch this. I've seen this question coming on. All right. So here's the thing. So finally, you guys have noticed. Let me get back to this Hunter Biden thing in just a second. Finally, you guys have noticed. So if you look at my hat that I have, everybody has been talking about the hat. All right. And here's the thing. The hat does not come with the patch. My mother actually put this patch on, and we are discussing, it was a question whether or not anybody was going to notice. So this is going to potentially be the new design. As soon as I can get the hats in and we can figure out how to get the patches on, and then of course how I can get them to where you guys can buy them and I can get all your email, or not emails, but all your mailing addresses and things like that. We will be getting them out. So there's going to be some movement, but we had to kind of agree upon, sort of what was going to happen. Now the patches, I have more patches. I ordered more patches than I'm anticipating hats. So depending upon what happens, I may just have to do something with the patches themselves. We also have, thanks to Outlaw Dogs, we also have buttons that have shown up too. So there's the button, trying to get it so you guys can see it. There it is. And so we have buttons as well. So there's going to be more information coming. The question, so Mark over on Facebook asked, how much am I looking at? I'm not looking at a lot. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not one of the types that wants to, make a whole bunch of money off of this. Realistically, I don't know. You're looking at maybe just a rough estimate. It's going to be lower than like $50. I will tell you that much. It is going to be lower than that. I just need to figure out what's going on. Now, none of this that I've showed you is actually in my shop. Okay. So none of this is in my shop. This is part of the reason why, is because the shop is run by a third party and I can't just add things into the shop. I have to like go through their products and, doll them up with my logo and stuff in order to get it. So I've got to figure out how to get something set up. I'll probably do just an e-commerce site or whatever, but I will have to figure out how to get this up so that you guys can order it. And that's one of the tasks that I have. But now that you've mentioned it, now that you've seen it, and you're now asking for it, is this going to be okay? Would you be interested in getting this hat with this patch added to it? Okay. In order for this to go. If you're interested in that, just, drop a note in the chat, say either yes or no or whatever. Yeah, we are going to be moving some things going on. I have, okay. So I've got a couple of yeses. I've got a few yeses in here. So everybody seems to want it. All right. So then I will continue to figure it out, work it out and figure it out, to get everything taken care of. So, yeah, so that'll be coming in the near future as well. And yes, Jeannie, the patches can be sewn on. And of course, everybody wants my, my hat. So I've been working on trying to figure out what's the best way I could get the hat, get a Whiskey Musings logo on it so that it's different from everybody else, and am able to put it on. So this is cool. So everything's all about the hat. We got it. So, all right. So I will continue to work on that. So more information on that in the future. So anyway, all right, now you're going to make me, yeah. All right. So to kind of get back to, Hunter Biden, of course, we have all this information coming out and it's contradictory and everything else, but we have all this wonderful information out with regards to it. And of course, Joe Biden, being the demented old man that he is denying yet again that he has any involvement in Hunter's schemes. I'm sorry. But we have Tony Bobulinski, who was involved in this entire process, who says the big guy is straight up Joe Biden. We have all these other, the WhatsApp messages, the conversations with Hunter on voicemails that were on the laptop. We have all kinds of things. I mean, I'm just getting tired of all of the naysayers who are saying that it's not possible, that Joe Biden is like the cleanest thing since sliced bread, and that they wipe his bottom and he is like just glowing gold and everything else. Sorry. I'm honestly, he's horrible. He lies. His whole career is built on lies. In fact, if anybody with half a brain before they voted for this numbskull would have looked back on his history, they would have realized that he lies, he plagiarizes, he does all kinds of stuff. Anyway, and yeah, this is just horrible. But he not only did it, he not only denies it once, he's denied it twice because he's doubled down on it. And he actually has denied it apparently up to at least 3 times to the press. And he keeps getting told that, we keep finding out. Yeah. Corn Pop and Crackhead. The dynamic duo of foreign influence peddling schemes. Yes, they are. Oh my gosh. Thanks for that. Conservative Lounge. That's just. Yeah. Anyway, so, obviously we've got some serious problems going on here. Well, because of this email, there was an email that was created by, from David Weiss, who essentially wrote in the email that he couldn't prosecute Hunter Biden outside of Delaware. And of course that contradicts what Merrick Garland has been saying, not only to Congress, but also to the press. He's been saying that David Weiss had, complete authority, that he could have done anything that he wanted, so on and so forth. And yeah, it just, come on, folks, this isn't true. So I'm kind of hoping, and this is in the Epoch Times, that what they say in here is going to happen. So House Speaker Kevin McCarthy, who, I'll be honest with you, just to kind of take a step back. In the beginning, I felt that he probably wasn't going to do a very good job. And to be sort of honest, he's not done everything that I would want him to do. However, he at least has done a few things that could be done, within considering the political sphere and the system that we're in. So anyway, and yes, Day, I know that I caught that, earlier. So anyway, the point here is that Kevin McCarthy is raised the idea of possibly opening up an impeachment inquiry into, Merrick Garland, and essentially the, based off of the email and the contradiction of Garland's testimony. Now look, Merrick Garland, I am so glad that he did not make it onto the Supreme Court. That being said, we ended up with Jackson, who is, well, let's just say she's an activist, not a jurist. So I'm kind of hoping that Kevin McCarthy can actually do something against this guy. But apparently the U.S. attorney brought several tax charges against Hunter Biden, and the IRS whistleblower alleged, that's Gary Shapley, alleged in testimony to Congress that Weiss told top officials during a meeting in 2022 that he wasn't the person deciding whether charges would be filed, and that the request for charges to be brought in Washington, D.C., and California had been rejected. Now, one thing you got to remember, just a side note, one thing that you've got to remember about news outlets, they don't look at Washington State when they say Washington. When they say Washington, they're talking D.C. Okay. But anyway, so yeah, again, Garland is in trouble. Garland is in trouble. And the Biden administration is also in trouble. The FBI is in trouble over all of this. And if you actually don't believe in the quote unquote deep state yet, you haven't been listening. You've got your head shoved in the sand or up your ass. You figure out which one it is. Yeah, I'm hoping this will happen because this will be really kind of nice if it does, but at the same time, not necessarily holding my breath on anything coming from a judicial standpoint toward either Hunter Biden or the Biden administration and its members. Anyway, all right, so I'm going to, got to go back here. I want to take a look. Oh, okay. And speaking of which, since they don't really have anything like, the unfortunate submarine incident that happened, and or any other Trump stuff at the moment to be able to distract, today started a new campaign. And that new campaign is called, colloquially, and stolen, of course, God, this just cracks me up, Bidenomics. Bidenomics. Oh, Biden couldn't do economics, economic 101 in any freaking, oh my gosh. Biden wouldn't know what the hell economics actually was. I don't even think that he could freaking spell economics, to be honest with you. But anyway, the poor guy, I'm sorry. He's old and I understand that he really should not be in the office. He should be. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they 25th him. But what's really sad about this is that, he talks about his economic strategies and how his economics are doing so well, yet every available metric outside of the ones that you can manipulate are all saying the same thing. Well, this popped in town hall. The White House's new excuse for Biden's economic failures is something else. According to the latest polling averages from Real Clear Politics, Biden's overall job approval remains more than 10 points underwater, with more than 53% of Americans saying they disapprove of his performance. On his handling of the economy, Americans have an even worse opinion of Biden. The RCP's average on that question shows just 39.2% of Americans approve of Biden's handling of the economy. So the White House and Joe Biden and every other freaking Democrat out there on the Twitterverse has been posting about Bidenomics. Bidenomics is helping. I mean, even Elizabeth Warren has talked about Bidenomics. And every single time that that's come out, I've essentially said, yeah, Bidenomics is just wonderful. You have less in your savings account. You have more of a credit burden. You have to pay more for essentials and necessities, and your paycheck is smaller in Bidenomics. And I've had some people, some Twitter, twats, I'll call them the twats because that's what they are. They're freaking Democrat, liberal, leftist lunatics who are on the Twitter sphere. They come in and they try to tell me, oh, well, no, not according to economists, blah, blah, blah. Well, you know what, folks? I'm sorry, but all available metrics, everything is showing. Inflation, you've got cost of living expenses, you've got rent prices going up. There is so much. In fact, Bam over here on Rumble says, Les, I have zero in my savings. Under Trump, I had savings. So, everybody is hurting. Everyone is hurting, with the exception of the rich elites who seem to be able to weather this entire thing. But yeah, they keep talking about Bidenomics. And the latest thing is that, Bidenomics is just now taking effect. Well, I'm going to be honest with you. If Bidenomics is just now taking effect, I'm really scared to think about what is coming down the next 6 months to a year. Okay. I'm really kind of scared for that. So yeah, I just Bidenomics apparently hasn't kicked in yet, and we're just now seeing the effects of it. God, if that's the case, I'm scared. I am really scared for what's coming down. We have Jeannie over on Facebook. Yep, I just said Biden equals broke. Yep, I agree. Biden does equal broke. A lot of people are getting hurt by this, and this guy just continually goes on and on and on and talks about his economic failures. But hey, we have a savior. We have a savior, folks. I don't know if you know this, but we have the greatest of all saviors. If Joe Biden somehow gets kicked out of office before the end of his term, we have a fantastic righty in the bullpen. And yes, I'm tapping my arm like for the right-handed pitcher in the bullpen. We have the absolute spectacular, wonderful VP, Kamala Harris. And of course, folks, I'm laughing because of the fact that is completely wrong. In fact, I'm not the only one who essentially thinks that she is probably the worst freaking vice president ever. Check this out. Apparently, there was a poll that was revealed Monday from NBC News that she is the most unpopular vice president in history. In history. The poll showed that 49% of registered voters who answered the poll, of course, we got to keep it real. Okay. This is just out of the people, that are out here, that responded. They essentially, 49% have a negative view of her compared to 32% being in the positive. But that's not all, according to this piece. Overall, Harris received a negative net negative rating of negative 17. That's the lowest net negative rating for a vice president in the history of the poll. Went up against the last 4 vice presidents during their tenures, with Mike Pence at a negative 4 in October of 2019 at his lowest. Joe Biden was, a whopping +1 in December of 2020 when he was vice president. Dick Cheney was +23 in May of 2003. We all know how hated he was. And of course, we have Al Gore, our wonderful climate crisis commander, Al Gore, at a +15 in March of 1995. Apparently, the poll also sets out in October of 2019, 38% of the respondents had a negative view of Harris's predecessor, former Vice President Pence, while 34% of those surveyed had a positive view of him. These dire numbers come as the White House officials work with Harris to repair her image and allay fears expressed as far back as 2021 that she is a liability to Democrat hopes to retain power. She was a disaster. Okay. She was a disaster in the Democrat primaries in 2019 into 2020. She was a disaster. And, I just can't believe why they would even pick it. She dropped out. For those of you that don't remember, she dropped out after the first primary. She was out of the freaking race, and they asked her to come back as the VP. She is absolutely horrible. Absolutely horrible. And by the way, she is just as much of a liar, or at least her intern that runs her Twitter account is just as much of a liar as Joe Biden's intern, because they keep talking about how this president has, brought in 13 million jobs. He hasn't. And even, you can go on and on and on about this. I've said it before. I'll say it again. We gained back about 10 to 11 million after COVID got lifted. That's what happened. 10 to 11 million came back after COVID got lifted. You can't count those as new jobs. They are old jobs that just started back up. So anyway, God, if she ends up becoming president, and this is part of the problem, actually, this is part of the problem that the Democrats have realistically, is they have no good choices. They literally have zero good choices here, which is part of the reason why I think, and some other political pundits like me are thinking that they're actually kind of stroking Gavin Newsom to try and get him to jump into the presidential race for 2024. And especially with this whole thing about Hunter Biden, his laptop, and all of this, Burisma payments and China payments and all of this other crap. It's just, and Gavin Newsom, as much as everybody wants to think that he's the greatest, he's not anywhere close. Just take a look at California. Take a look at how California has been governed since he became governor. They're at a $7 trillion, that's right, I said it with a T, $7 trillion deficit in their situation. And their crime rates are through the roof. They've got net negative people. People are leaving the state. And so, California is California is a shithole. Okay. Now, Washington and Oregon are not that far off, but California is a literal shithole. And they are, they're trying to get Gavin Newsom to come because he has charisma, supposedly. I mean, he can stand in front of a mic and smile, and people think he's a handsome fella. But his policies and his desires, they are completely disastrous for the country if they were to decide on that. So, Bam. Bam just yelled at me. Hey, I don't live in a shithole. Oh, sorry, Bam. I'm sorry. I know this. Look, I've said it before and I'll say it again. California, Oregon, and Washington, as well as New York, we all have a very similar problem. Okay. We all have a very similar problem. The cities within those states, which are literally make up like 2/3 of the population of the states, the cities within that state kind of run everything. And this is part of the problem that I have with people who sit here and talk about how the Electoral College, needs to get taken away. And we need to go to a strict popular vote democracy. And if you ever really want to see what a popular vote democracy is going to look like at a national level, all you have to do is look at the states of Washington, Oregon, California, and New York. Even Illinois also is another one. All you have to do is look at those 5 states and how they are run. Because in Washington, Oregon, and California, okay, it pretty much splits right around the mountain line. For those of you who don't understand the geography, you've got the Cascade Range, which runs from the Canadian border roughly down through Washington, through Oregon, and then meets up with the Sierra Nevadas in California. And if you go to the west side of those mountains, it's all filled with pretty much, for the majority, especially the cities and all of the leftist lunatics who make up those cities. And then everything on the east side of the mountains, again, for the most part, not always, but for the most part, Okay. You find Republicans, conservatives, the rural folks. There's not a lot of urban dwellers and leftist lunatics out in those spaces. And so this is part of the problem. This is why, one of the reasons why the eastern side of Oregon is trying to secede from Oregon and adopt themselves into Idaho, because Idaho in and of itself has only one major city. And that major city, honestly, right now, which is Boise, by the way, is right now more purple than blue. Whereas, Washington, for an example, Seattle, Tacoma, Olympia, those are all blue. Spokane, which is in the east side of the state in Washington, is kind of more of a purple, turning blue, but more purple. Things like that. And so, everybody who talks about, let's just cut off, Oregon, Washington, and California, and we'll be able to make America great again. Well, you can't really do that realistically, because what you're doing is you're essentially taking out a good population of Republicans and conservative people when you do that crap. Now, if you could say, hey, let's just cut it off at the mountains and drop that side into the sea, hey, I'm all for that, even though I live on the west side of the mountains. I could see where that would be a thing. But realistically, I mean, again, what we're dealing with, what we're seeing here is more of an urban versus rural setup. So urban versus rural is really where we're at. You have the urban folks who have pretty much abandoned the Judeo-Christian values for the most part. They've turned to more of a paganist kind of lifestyle. They're the ones that are pushing the things like the whole Pride Month and all of these other things. And then you have the people who are out of those in the rural cities, rural states, the flyover states, that are pretty much still the Judeo-Christian values. They go to church. They believe in God. They believe in the Bible and the Constitution and all of those kinds of things. So, again, this is part of the reason why I keep saying this is more of an urban versus rural scenario. And it's going to get worse. It is just going to get worse. So I would love to see the states, if they could, adopt an electoral college. And I think that things would change in that particular environment, which is part of the reason why the left keeps going after the electoral college, because they want it to be a democracy, which is part of the reason why they keep talking about the, destroying the democracy. The right, the extreme MAGAs, they are destroying the democracy. We don't have a democracy. We have a constitutional republic. We have a democracy-like actions at a lot of places within our government system and government organizations, like at the local level or at the state level. Oftentimes there is a democracy, majority rules functionality at those levels. But as far as the federal government is concerned, we are a constitutional republic. And so this is part of what's happening there. All right. Speaking of constitutional republics, let me go ahead and get this going. I think this is the button. All right. So for this week's Constitutional Quarter, and yes, folks, I don't have a pet of the week. I'm sorry. If you want to get your pet of the week in, go to fans@whiskeymusings.online. That's fans@whiskeymusings.online. And you can submit your pet there. So you can maybe get them in for next Wednesday's pet of the week. But for tonight's Constitutional Quarter, or Constitution Quarter, I thought I would talk a little bit about the preamble to the Constitution. Okay. In specifics, there's a lot of people that have talked about the preamble and have said that because the preamble is in the Constitution, in the Constitution, that it should, it's part of our legal system. And let me explain. Okay. First of all, what you need to do is you need to go out and get yourself a copy of the Constitution. I have a fantastic one right here that you can get by going to constitution.whiskeymusings.online. That's constitution.whiskeymusings.online to get this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution. It's a great keepsake. You can give that a shot. Again, head off to constitution.whiskeymusings.online and get that. But let's go ahead and look at the preamble to the Constitution. And let me go ahead and read it for you. And it goes, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." Okay, now how many of you actually sang that? I can tell you in my mind I was singing it, That's how I learned the preamble to the Constitution, was thanks to Schoolhouse Rock back in the day. But let's kind of break this down. So first of all, it talks about we the people of the United States. So essentially what that is saying is that the people are granting this Constitution. They are handing it to the federal government. Okay. And this is where our principle comes from, with the idea that the people are the government. Okay. There's a lot more to it than that. There's more references outside of that. But the point is that we the people of the United States. So that means that we as the people are giving this over. We're creating this as our government. So the people are in charge. The second piece. Go ahead and pop this up so you guys can see it. The second piece out of this is in order to form a more perfect union. Now, if you recall in the first Constitution Quarter episode, I talked about the Articles of Confederation, which started it was the first document that created our country and failed. And it was actually started to be written at the same time the Declaration of Independence was done. And during the Revolutionary War, it was, worked on and finalized. Let me give a shout out to Rich. Thank you, Rich. I do appreciate the Rumble rant. Rich says, great show tonight, and went ahead and gave me a Rumble rant. Thank you very much. I do appreciate that, Rich. Okay. So getting back to the Constitution, let's go to continue on about the next part, which is establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. Now, this entire part of the sentence, and the preamble is literally just one sentence in length, put together by a bunch of different ideas. But this sort of describes and outlines the intent of the Constitution. Now, one of the things that is interesting is that a lot of people talk about the things like promote the general welfare as a right that has been enshrined in the Constitution. And while the principle is generally enshrined in the Constitution, the whole idea of promoting the general welfare is kind of an abstract idea. And again, the preamble, if you think of it, it's more of like an introduction to the Constitution. And so what ends up happening here is the introduction to the Constitution basically says, hey, this is why we are doing this. But technically, the preamble itself is not part of the Constitution. And so because it's not part of the Constitution, these phrases, which are often quoted and pointed at and so on and so forth, are again abstract ideas that help to frame the intent of what follows within the Constitution. And so the last part of the sentence where they say, do ordain and establish this Constitution, this is where the founders basically are saying, okay, so we've told you why we're doing it, and now we basically say that here it is. And so everything that follows this part of the sentence is the actual stuff that is acted upon from a legal standpoint, okay? And the reason why I kind of wanted to talk about this is because on Twitter a couple days ago, actually I think it was this past weekend, the entire Democrat amoeba started spitting out stuff about the Dobbs decision, because of course the Dobbs decision turned 1 year old. And so they were talking about abortion and how abortion, abortion rights, they're a right. And it's, the federal government needs to secure that right and all this other stuff. And so I essentially have, I responded to every single one of those talking about how it's not in the Constitution. Okay. Abortion is not in the Constitution. If you can find it within this book, within the Constitution, if you can find it, I want somebody to find it. And I want them to show me where within the Constitution that abortion actually shows up as a responsibility of the federal government. And typically what ends up happening is somebody comes back with the general welfare, promote the general welfare part. And the fact of the matter is that general welfare is just an idea. It was a basic idea. It's not part of the actual Constitution itself. It is a, shall we say, a nebulous conception and principle. But that's not one of the things that the Constitution actually does. The things in the Constitution are supposed to promote the general welfare, which is where they come from. So this idea that promoting the general welfare is contained within the Constitution, physically promoting the general welfare is a phrase that is in the Constitution, but it's part of the preamble. And one of the things that you have to understand in terms of the way that they wrote back in the day is typically what you would see is you would see paragraphs and sentences starting off with, this is why we do this thing, and here's the thing. So for an example, the Second Amendment, many people talk about, and we'll get to a more in-depth discussion on the Second Amendment when I get to it. But the Second Amendment talks about a well-regulated militia being necessary for the security of a free state. That's what's called the predicate. That's essentially the preamble, if you will, of the statement that's going to follow, which is essentially, this is the thing. So this is why we're doing the thing. Again, the whole preamble in this case, this is why we're doing it. We are giving and creating this Constitution in order to form a more perfect union. Again, the mistake made with the Articles of Confederation. To establish justice, to ensure domestic tranquility, to provide for the common defense, promote general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our offspring. That's what posterity means. But these are all concepts that they are attempting to do through the Constitution, which follows. So this is the predicate for, these are the reasons why we're doing it. And this is what we're going to do. Everything that's included in the Constitution, which starts, believe it or not, with Article 1. And Article 1 is the major portion of the Constitution. If you look at the actual words, Article 1 is the biggest section. And the reason being is because it actually outlines the things that Congress is supposed to pay attention to and legislate for. That is really, I mean, in a nutshell, the first article, Section 8, by the way, but the first article literally is the article that outlines what the federal government is supposed to do. And as Buddy points out, because of course, you know, Buddy is on it. He will correct me if I'm wrong, so on and so forth. But Buddy basically points out preamble means introduction. And that's correct. So the preamble of the Constitution, which everybody has memorized, anyone who took civics has memorized, is essentially just the reasons why they are creating the Constitution. What is their intent? What are they attempting to achieve? And that is literally what the preamble is. So even though the preamble exists as words within the Constitution, it is not a set of guidelines. It's not a set of rules. It's not a set of instructions. And just because the idea of promoting the general welfare or providing for the common defense is there, that doesn't give you any instructions as to how. That's what's further down in Article 1 through, I believe it's 6. I think there's only 6 articles in the original. Give me a second. No, I'm sorry, 7, because the 7th article doesn't really count. The 7 just basically is, here's all of us and we're signing it. But through the 6 articles, the original 6 articles, that's what they're trying to do. And again, as I pointed out, if you really want to know what government is supposed to be doing, just look at Article 1, Section 8. That outlines everything that the federal government is supposed to do in literally, essentially, a line-by-line item. Okay? Line-by-line itemized list. And abortion doesn't show up there. All right. That is my final Whiskey Musings thought of the evening, and that ends our Constitution Quarter. Do me a favor. If you like the program, if you like what I'm doing, please head on over to Rumble, sign up for an account. It's free. And hit the follow button. Sometimes I say subscribe, but hit the follow button there. And that will make it so that you follow the Whiskey Musings broadcast. You can also follow the Constitution Quarter, because Constitution Quarter is its own channel where I basically take the live broadcast of the Constitution Quarter and I just cut it off and throw it up in that other channel so you can refer to it later without having to watch the entire program to get to the Constitution Quarter. Okay. So before I take off, there's one more thing that I need all of you live chatters in the chat. You need to let me know what you want me to do here. Okay. So as everybody knows, okay, don't leave yet, Bam. Don't leave. As everybody knows, okay, Independence Day is coming up on Tuesday. Okay. Independence Day is coming up on Tuesday. All right. I am thinking of doing a 3-hour broadcast on Independence Day. So here's the question for you. Okay. Item number. Okay. And here we go. We're going to do 1 and 2 again. So option number 1 for Independence Day is that I do it from noon to 3 Eastern time, because noon to 3 is usually where Mark K is transmitting. So I sort of usurp his noon to 3 time frame, and I broadcast from noon to 3 on Independence Day. That's July 4th. Okay. So that's item number 1. Option number 2 is that I do the exact same thing, but I do it at night from 9 p.m. to midnight. Okay. So option A or 1, either one, is noon till 3 Eastern time transmitting on Independence Day, July 4th. Option 2 or B is transmitting from 9 to midnight or 6 to 9 my time. Okay. on Independence Day as well. Okay, so it looks like option 1 is taking over. So, okay, so just to reiterate, we have 2 changes, just really quick, 2 changes. No, it's not going to be on WOKV. I'm sorry, Mark, over on Facebook. It's not going to be on WOKV. It'll only be here. So two things. Saturday is a time change. I will be transmitting 2 hours earlier, starting at 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 Central, 5 Mountain, 4 Pacific for Saturday. On the following Tuesday for Independence Day, I will be transmitting from noon to 3 on Tuesday on Independence Day, July 4th. Have literally no idea. Okay. No idea what I'm going to do, but I'll figure something out between now and then. All right. So Saturday, 7 p.m. Eastern instead of my 9 p.m. It'll be 7 p.m. Eastern. We will see you on Saturday then. And I'll let everybody know. I'll remind everybody during social media. So make sure to follow me on social media. And yes, I will be on next Wednesday as well. So Saturday's good. Tuesday and Wednesday, do all of that. But anyway, yes, Wednesday still 2. So Tuesday, I'll do a Tuesday 3-hour special, and then Wednesday also. All right. Oh my gosh, that's a lot. Okay, we will see you Saturday right here on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everybody.
The Whiskey Musings broadcast is produced by Active Eye Media, LLC. All rights reserved.